Coming up on a live edition of No Pulp, it's Championship Monday. We're going to break down the Final Four games that brought us here.
Oh yeah, and going live, well, it means pulling out all the stops. Zach Letson joins the show to go over everything March Madness.
But one juicer is not enough for an hour-long show. I take on Leo Silverman. Later in the program, we're talking all things women's hoops.
LSU Tigers, Caitlin Clark, and more. Plus, we talk about how both the Aztecs and Huskies came this far, 40 minutes, one win away from the national title.
Of course, we're going to give you the keys for each of those teams to win. We'll tell you who is going to win. Special live edition of No Pulp starts right now.
Sonny DeShera from Auburn. The freshman never win. The freshman never win championships.
Jeremy, you are an absolute square.
Cleveland the catch. Good if it goes. Oh, he hit it.
Wow, it is getting serious.
Frankly, I'm pretty embarrassed.
Bang!
Hey, welcome into the CitrusTV studios. Jacob Morris, John Dales. No Pulp Championship Monday, Jacob. We've gone back and forth about college hoops all season, but we've gotten here.
It feels good after everything you and I have been through, after everything the college basketball fan base has been through. We're finally here, 40 minutes away.
Well, we were given two really good games this past Saturday to bring us to this point. We start with Florida Atlantic and San Diego State, couple of underdog teams getting all the way to the Final Four. San Diego State comes back from 14 down, wins it at the buzzer. We start with this. Where does that buzzer beater rank among March Madness great shots?
Well, it has to rank up there, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll give you something, John Dales. I'm sure you know this as a college basketball expert, but that was the first ever true buzzer beater in the Final Four. Of course, you had Chris Jenkins' shot in the national championship, which that, of course, I think you can't say that.
Yeah.
Butler's shot tops that. However, this is unbelievable, and it sums up the drama, right, of this tournament so well. Comes down to the last couple seconds. Did Florida Atlantic go too quick? San Diego State punishes the Owls on an unbelievable shot. I like the no timeout call. What a dramatic end to that game.
You do like that no timeout
I do.
call. I do.
Let the players play.
It's interesting. Yeah, the head coach, Brian Dutcher for San Diego State, he said, I ran out of plays at that point.
Yeah.
So I guess you just let the players decide it. Really good run from both of these teams, too. When we talk about Florida Atlantic, a 9 seed getting to this game, no team that was a 9 seed or worse had ever won a Final Four game, and they were right there. Man, it just came down to a couple of plays down the stretch.
It was an unbelievably dramatic finish, and again, it's even more impressive when you consider San Diego State down 14. I guess you could say they didn't lead at all in the second half. They didn't lead until the game was over,
actually, yeah.
I guess, right? Unbelievable, but I have to ask you, where does the Florida Atlantic run, shifting back to the Owls, where does that rank in terms of Cinderella runs? Do you have it up top? Do you have it close? Where is it at for you?
I've got it right up at the top.
Yeah.
Because what they did is, we've seen other teams make it to the Final Four, right? We've seen the George Masons, we've seen the Loyola Chicagos, but we rarely see them get to a point in the Final Four game where it's they belong in this stage, and they clearly belong. They probably should have won the game. So I'd say as good of an underdog, as good of a Cinderella as we've ever seen make the Final Four.
And an unbelievable team as well. Picked 5th preseason in Conference USA, 20-game win streak, fall just short. Unbelievable from Florida Atlantic. The second game, not quite as dramatic. Plain and simple, UConn rolls once again, takes care of business against Miami, taking the Canes down by 13. It was more UConn, more of the same. The Huskies dominant, took care of business easily against the Canes team that obviously was really hot as well.
Do you want to give me my credit now or
Yeah,
later
I was going
for
to. I was
saying
actually
that
gonna
UConn's the
wait,
best team in
but
the
go
country?
ahead,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I came on this program a couple of weeks ago and I told you, nobody's playing better basketball than the UConn Huskies. And after that point, before that point, the whole tournament, nobody's been playing better basketball than the UConn Huskies. They just ran, Miami has a great run. You know, they get to the Final Four. They ran into a buzzsaw. That is UConn. That is Adama Sanogo. There's just not much you could ask Miami to do because we already know how dangerous UConn is offensively. What they did defensively in this game was crazy. Miami shot 25% from the floor in the first half.
It was unbelievable, and like you're saying, it's the defense and the offense that is also impressive because this was the closest game of the tournament for UConn. 13 points, the winning margin. It brought the average winning margin down through 5 games now to 20.6 points for the Huskies.
Not bad.
So it's defense and offense. Nobody's scored more than 65 against this team in the tournament. That was a 23-point win over Arkansas, by the way. It's like you said, top to bottom, this team is playing, I'll give you your credit, the best basketball of anybody in the tournament. It makes sense why they're waiting one of the last 2 teams.
And one of the biggest reasons why is because of Adama Sanogo.
Yes.
He's averaging 21-10 in the tournament,
That'll
which is
do.
unbelievable. And again, he's just, it's not the fact that he's doing that, it's the fact that he stepped his game up come March, because on the whole season, he's averaging 17 and 7. So it's almost as though he's playing another like 10 minutes of basketball and getting those stats.
But what's so crazy about that, it's funny that you say that, is what's been so impressive is they've been waxing teams. He hasn't played more than 27 minutes in a game, and yet he's averaging 21 and 10. It's been unbelievable. If tonight UConn takes care of business and beats San Diego State by 13 plus, that'll be the only team to have ever done that. I think you start talking about the Huskies as the most dominant run in all of March Madness history.
They've been really impressive. That's the game that's coming up in just over an hour, but we've got plenty of show left right here up until then. And right after this first break, Zach Letson enters the show. Right now he's hurting from hearing about his Canes losing, but he tries to get some mojo back in the juicer against Jacob Morris. That's coming up after this.
Well, Thomas, you've got pre-diabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have pre-diabetes. Big time.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it.
You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. God, no.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early. You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back into the No Pulp National Championship Game Preview Show. Jacob Morris and John Dales, we've been with you to this point. We now welcome on Zach Letson. Zach, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Let's talk some hoops. Biggest night of the year for hoops.
Yeah, there we go. Zach Letson entering the juicer now. We know how this works at this point. I throw out a statement, the two of them give their takes. Whoever's right gets the impartial point by me. Whoever has the most points at the end of it, they win. So we start with this. We've been talking about the men's tournament. Who is the best player in this men's tournament? We'll start with you, Jacob.
Thank you, John. Zach, watch this. What I'm going to do right here is called playing to the impartial judge right here. A couple of weeks ago, John Dales came into the juicer and told me Adama Sanogo was playing some of the best basketball in the entire tournament. I'm here to tell you he's still the best player in the entire tournament. Zach, we sung his praises right before the break. You're talking about a guy that hasn't played more than 27 minutes in a game, and yet he's averaging 21 and 10, showing up at the biggest moment. And how about just the fourth player in the last 40 years to average over 20-plus points on 65% shooting entering the national title game? He's playing unbelievable. I've got an inkling that a player you're going to say has been, we'll say, playing a few more minutes than Adama Sanogo. All right, I think you have to factor that in. I'm not a huge per 40 guy, but if we bumped up those stats, John Dales, he'd be averaging like 50 and 20. So we're going to take Adama Sanogo, best player so far and for the rest of the tournament.
Well, I got a little inkling. Maybe that your UConn Huskies are a pretty good basketball team
are.
around Sanogo. All right, shocking information. Guys, it's got to be Marquise Noel for Kansas State. Every single tournament, there's that guard that just grabs eyeballs. In this tournament, it was Marquise Noel. John Calipari, you want to call this guy a little guy? Really? How you doing on your couch? Because this guy drops 27 against you, then comes back out, 30 points in the Elite Eight. Guys, that no-look alley-oop where he's just talking shop with his coach, no-look to the basket alley-oop. This guy was Showtime, a 5'8" kid from Harlem. Doing that in Madison Square Garden, guys, that was the story, one of the stories of the entire tournament.
Also averaged over 4 turnovers per game, played 37-plus minutes. Great stats, unbelievable run, but he's not in the national title. And if you got the ball in your hands all the time.
I think the clock ran out.
Yeah, the clock did run out. Hey, I'm not taking that into account. That was after the opening arguments there.
Yep.
I will tell you this. Look, you got one guy in, you mentioned Sanogo. I think he'd be pretty tired playing 40 minutes a game. But you got another guy that didn't even get a shot up with the season on the line, the game on the line. We go with the best player in this tournament. We go with Adama Sanogo, and Jacob Morris gets it right night. That's 1-0. Morris up over Letson. We'll go ahead now. It's not all about the players on the floor. It's also about the guys drawing up the plays from the sideline. How about the best coach in the tournament? Zach Letson, we start with you.
I know I'm going to get a lot of snowballs thrown at me for the answer that's about to come out of my mouth, but the best coach in this tournament was Jim Larinaga from the University of Miami.
Okay.
How many schools in the Elite Eight? How many schools made it to the Elite Eight? All right. Good joke. It's the comedy hour, apparently. How many schools made the Elite Eight in back-to-back years? 1.
But we're talking about
And we're talking about this year, so let's scope it on this year. Jacob, you're absolutely right. Let's get back to the program here. All right, we talked about Sonogo. He's 6'9". What's the tallest player that plays for Miami? What's his height? That's North Chadomir, 6'7". A team that plays 4 guards and a 6'7" forward got to the Final Four. That is phenomenal. And it's not just about who's on the team. It's about the path that you take there, because there were some really impressive runs. FAU, they had a really impressive run.
Yeah.
San Diego State, they had a really impressive one. How about beating a 1 seed in Houston, beating a 2 seed in Texas? FAU didn't have to do either of that. So the run that he led them on for a second straight year, really impressive. I got to go with Coach L for the Canes.
Florida Atlantic also a 9 seed, so let's keep that in mind. And that's a perfect transition because I'm picking Dusty May from Florida Atlantic. How about this guy? First of all, going back to Jim Larinaga, one guy above 6'7" just sounds like recruiting failure to me. So I don't know what to tell you there. That's all I got to say. Florida Atlantic and Dusty May is the only option here. You're talking about one of the all-time great Cinderella runs for a program. Zach Letson that had never won an NCAA tournament before. And you look throughout the season, a 20-game win streak. Yes, they blew a 14-point lead in the Final Four. But before that, 4 wins by a combined 19 points. To me, that points out good coaching in late moments, talking about a player, or talking about a coach rather, that's clutch, putting his players in a good position to succeed. In just his 5th year there, but an unbelievable run, and how about a run to the Final Four as well? Give me Dusty May, John Dales.
Another 2 good answers. To get to this point in the tournament, all the answers are pretty good. I love Jim Larinaga, doing the Muhammad Ali celebrating in the locker room. I'm going with Dusty May.
That's what we're talking
Look,
about.
Dusty May takes a FAU, you mentioned, CUSA, never won a tournament game. How about 4 in a row for you?
That's unbelievable.
It's crossed me over.
2-0. You got plenty of time left. We got 2
do.
questions left, 3 points left on the board.
I know.
We go to this one. This is one of my favorite things. The biggest what if in this year's tournament. What if blank didn't happen? Where would we be right now? We go with you, Jacob.
John Dales, I think the only way to approach this question is to say, what if, right? What about something that changed a Final Four team or something down the entire stretch? And for me, the easy answer is, what if the refs had given Memphis the timeout against Florida Atlantic with 6 seconds left, like they really should have? Everybody on the Memphis team, on the floor, on the bench, motioning for that timeout. You got a 1-1000, you got a 2-1000. You can watch it here. There's a timeout call, nothing. And here he goes down, and all of a sudden, jump ball, it's steal. What's going to happen? And so at the end of the day, Florida Atlantic comes back, wins the game on a game winner. And so all of a sudden, Florida Atlantic advances and plays fairly Dickinson. So you can look at this from a variety of ways. Of course, it takes a Final Four team out of the equation. But then all of a sudden, you wonder what Memphis, one of the hottest teams in the entire country, could have done matched up with a 16 seed. And then Tennessee, or maybe Tennessee goes there. Regardless, it completely changes the entire complexion of the tournament. Give me that failed timeout call. Florida Atlantic benefited, and hey, took advantage.
It was a controversial moment.
It was.
It was also in the round of 64. How about a controversial moment that happened with a ticket to the Final Four on the line? Oh, I don't know. Seems kind of important, right? Easily the most controversial moment of the entire tournament, Creighton getting that foul called on him with a second left against San Diego State. You got a tie game,
Protect
Jacob.
the players, Zach.
A tie game. What, the refs have to get involved to win a game? Clearly
Protect
they do.
the players.
Clearly they do, because listen, I know when a lot of people, as you get a look on your screen, when they look at this, they'll slow it down and say,
He slaughtered him,
Zach.
Zach.
That foul, maybe it's textbook, maybe it's that. How often do you see officials call that? I'm telling you what, it's not all the time.
If something happens, you got to call it.
Well, the question was a what-if scenario, and this is about as 50-50 a call as you can get running down the stretch here. So I'm not here to slander the referees and say it was a horrible call. But I'll tell you what, you don't want to see calls, you don't want to see games in Final Four positions determined like that by the ref. That's the biggest what-if moment. We could be having a completely different conversation with a different team in the national championship if that's different.
Be Creighton against Memphis. So both are what-ifs
That's a
happen.
good
in the
one.
Final Four.
That would be an interesting thought experiment. I've lost a playoff game at a call when everybody on the bench is calling timeout, we lose the ball. So that is tough. I got to go with Letson.
All right.
Look, that call, a lot of times you don't see it called. So you mentioned Final Four. That literally changed the Final Four, that one call.
My call did as well.
Two to
That's
one.
fine.
Could have maybe 4 rounds before.
We'll move on.
2-1. This one last question, worth 2 points. You get it right, you're the winner, Zach Letson. You get it right, Jacob Morris. Your reign over all the guests we have in the juicer. It just keeps going. What is, and this is a very open-ended one, lots of good options. You're going to see all of them on one-shotting moment tonight. What's the best moment in this year's tournament?
John Dales, tell me if ever in your life, I'm going to quote Vern
familiar.
Lundquist. Vern Lundquist right here. In your life, have you ever seen anything like Virginia choking the game away to Furman? The ending to that game was absurd. First, Kihei Clark, missing a free throw to even make that situation happen. 80% free throw shooter, misses. Then, what are you doing? You got a timeout, and you're saying, hey, I'm going to throw it down the field 50 yards? What are you doing? That was a crazy idea from Kihei Clark, and then a shot to win the game doesn't go. But I mean, Kihei Clark, a veteran in college basketball, making the bonehead play of the decade. I understand this was a first-round game and that Virginia's prone to choke. However, even for their standards, that was shocking. This game was over. Instead, Virginia keeps Virginia-ing. Jacob Morris.
Virginia keeps Virginia-ing. I like that. What I will say for your moment, that was therapeutic for me as a Purdue fan because Kihei Clark made one of the great passes in NCAA tournament history to end up beating the Boilermakers. He throws that one away. But speaking of the Boilermakers kept Boilermakering, if that's we're using your phrase. My best moment, it pains me to say, Fairleigh Dickinson, for the second time a 16 seed ever, takes down a number 1 seed. I'm about honest, unbiased journalism, and that's what makes this tournament so special. You have quite literally a David versus Goliath situation with the smallest team in the entire tournament matching up against the 7-4 we now know near unanimous National Player of the Year. And Fairleigh Dickinson not only wins this game, but really, Tails and I talked about it a couple weeks earlier, dominated it from start to finish. That's what makes the NCAA tournament so special. Even though it pains me every year, 13, 14, 15, 16 seed takes down Purdue. We have to wait on the 14 seed to complete the trifecta of the bottom seeds.
And you hit the cycle
Purdue.
there. There you
exactly.
go. Yeah.
But the fact of the matter, Fairleigh Dickinson becoming the second ever 16 seed, something we thought we might never see again. That's what makes March Madness and the NCAA tournament so special.
That takes guts. That takes integrity to choose your own team. Losing when you got a giant on your side, you're going up against everybody, the shortest team ever.
Bunch of 5'11" guys.
Seed. That's why you get the point and you get the win. Jacob Morris is your juicer champion. Hey, good effort you put in there, Zach.
I appreciate it. It's a tough one. We're 0-3, but it's tough. You got to take your lumps.
All right, well, that was the first edition of the Juicer. We've got Leo Silverman coming on the program later, but up after this break, we've talked a lot about the men's tournament. We're going to talk about the women's Final Four that just wrapped up and the national championship game. That coming up right after this.
Fancy pants peanut butter? A big screen television? You haven't even bought a sofa yet. A motorcycle? When your father finds out, he's gonna flip his shoes with 2 buckles? What do you even need 2 buckles for? Mr. Big Shot, buying whiskey shots for everybody in the bar. From the looks of it, I'd say nobody even remembers. Feed the pig.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back into No Pulp Live, 1-hour men's national championship preview show. The first of its kind, by the way.
Yes, sir.
We've talked a lot about the men's tournament. We'll talk more about the Aztecs and Huskies coming up. But now we switch over to the women's side. For the first time in program history, LSU, national champions, 102-85 winners over Iowa and over Caitlin Clark, by the way. The LSU Tigers get it done. An unbelievable run and an unbelievable performance against Clark and the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, the way this national championship game has captivated the nation is really, it's something really good for the women's basketball, the sport in general. But the way that Iowa beat South Carolina, and we'll talk about that in a second, it's what got them beat in this game. Against South Carolina, Iowa was essentially saying, we're daring you to shoot the 3 ball. And then they did that against LSU, and by halftime, they were down double digits.
Big time, and I think you got to give your flowers as well to Angel Reese. How about double-double number 34? That's a new record for NCAA women's basketball. It's a great point. Iowa lived and died by the Hut threes sort of situation, and it didn't work for the Hawkeyes, and it did work for the Tigers. You had a couple players unbelievable from behind the arc, but Kim Mulkey, one of the most polarizing figures in women's basketball. She can get hot, she can get in refs' faces. She had a couple controversial calls. Could have been called for a technical, but you got to give her so much credit. You talk about 21 seasons at Baylor where she won 3 national titles, and she makes the move over to LSU. It's a bit of a homecoming. And you have a lot of people that say, all right, she wants to get closer to home, but this isn't really a career move, is it? Year 2, she wins a national title. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really impressive. Jasmine Clark as well, hitting those 7 shots in the first half, 7 for 7 from the floor, 5 of 5 from 3. She had 11 points for the entire tournament heading into that game. 21 of them at halftime of that contest. LSU ends up taking home the crown. But let's talk a little bit more about Caitlin Clark. She captivated the nation with her run to the title game. I think a lot of people have been hearing the name for a while, and then on Friday night when they take down the undefeated South Carolina Gamecocks, that's when a lot of people first see, yeah, she is legit. She is the best women's basketball player since when?
I am usually very careful about becoming, we'll say, victim to recency bias, but I think you start to think about this and you can't overthink it. You know what I mean? You talk about a player, you see the stats right there, 27, 7, and 7. It's what she does other than scoring that's so impressive, right? And I think the first individual that came to my mind was, Breanna Stewart, right? And you talk about a player who was a 4-time national champion, a 3-time AP Player of the Year, but she was on those unbelievable UConn teams. She never scored more than 20 points per game. When you talk about Caitlin Clark, not only filling it up, right, but on the biggest stage against a team that had won 40-plus games, scoring 41 points to take her team to the national title. That's what it's all about. Big-time players make big-time plays.
41, 6, and 8. You mentioned it too. The way that she gets her teammates involved is really impressive. And again, when you're talking about getting the sport out there, she was choked up after the loss, talking about what it meant, what her career meant, and hoping that young girls might see her out there and be inspired to play. She did that on ESPN's most watched college basketball, men's or women's broadcast in 15 years.
It's unbelievable. And the old saying goes, right, if you build it, people will come, and I think that's a great example of this. Caitlin Clark captivated the nation. Great for the game. Hopefully it goes forward. Well, we talked about the South Carolina game. Folks, listen, if you don't know me, there's nothing I hate more than giving John Dales credit, but my goodness. John Dales, a couple days ago, let's just say he called the upset.
The last leg of the parlay features anybody but South Carolina to win the NCAA women's tournament. Whether it's Caitlin Clark, LSU, Virginia Tech with Liz Kitley, somebody is going to dethrone South Carolina, stop them from being undefeated national champs. Plus 638 on that parlay. We put down $10 on it. We can win back 63.80. That's a good parlay.
Very good. Not only did you hit that, you hit a couple other bets as well. He's still waiting on the Chicago Cubs to win
That'll
the
work
division.
out pretty well.
That's a good future in the bank if you want it after everything else he hit. John Dale's right about that, and South Carolina goes down. 42-game winning streak comes to an end. And, does this remind you a little bit of when UConn fell? Because to me, I don't think it's near as close. You're talking about a Huskies squad that won 111 games when it fell to Mississippi State. Regardless, unbelievable run by South Carolina.
It's obviously a different animal because you need to do what South Carolina did more than twice to get to what UConn did. But still, when you have a team that's won 42 in a row, what I find most interesting is when you get into a tight game late and the players who don't know how to lose suddenly get into a close game. The players who don't know how to play in a close game for the most part are suddenly playing in a game that's 1 or 2 point deficit in the third and fourth quarters late into the game. So that's what was most surprising to me. And also the way that when you have one of these all-time great teams, we even saw it the way that Fairleigh Dickinson defended Purdue, is a team comes in with a new game plan on just how to beat South Carolina, just how to beat Purdue. And in this game, we talked about it, Iowa's defensive strategy saying, make the role players beat you. They took Aaliyah Boston out of the game. She had no points at halftime. It was so impressive what Iowa did. It went down, we'll talk about it later in the show, one of the best women's basketball games, I think, in a very long time, given the stage.
It was fantastic. Obviously, you have Clark's performance, but it's a great point about the way that Iowa defended South Carolina because, for lack of a better word, the Hawkeyes gave South Carolina the Ben Simmons treatment. They said, go ahead, you can take it. You can shoot anybody but Aaliyah Boston, beat us. And quite frankly, South Carolina couldn't do it. And it's a missed opportunity for the Gamecocks because you win 2 in a row. That's when you start talking dynasty. Now, South Carolina is going to be fine. They've lost 9 games over the last 3 years, but Aaliyah Boston headed to the WNBA draft. Missed opportunity for the Gamecocks.
And the most thankful team that happened, LSU, because when they played South Carolina regular season, lost by 24.
Big time. Well, that's all the time we have now. But moving on, we've got more coverage of women's hoops. When we come back, Leo Silverman joins the show. Another juicer you just can't get enough. No Pulp. Back after this.
They said a bottle was just a bottle. That no one would ever notice me. But I knew I could be more. That one day, I would make people smile.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Welcome back into No Pulp Live National Championship Preview Show. Juicer number 2 coming up. You already know how it works. But now, Leo Silverman has joined the show. He's going to go head-to-head with John Dales. John, you feeling confident against this guy?
I'm feeling very confident. I am. Not anything against him, but you got to feel confident heading into battle.
That felt a little bit personal.
What am I supposed to be, unconfident here?
Listen, Jacob, I'm undefeated for a reason. Let's get that out of the way. That's all I have to say.
Undefeated Leo. Let's get this underway. We've got some animosity, at least, I guess, between
Pretty sure I'm undefeated as well, but I don't talk about it. But.
It's true. We start with who is the tournament's biggest breakout star. We saw a couple great stories all around this year's tournament. John, I'll come to you first. Who you got?
I will hold out a peace offering to Zach Letson, who I just gave a loss to. I'm going to Miami. I'm going Destiny Harden is the biggest breakout star. She's been playing college basketball since 2017. And she saved her best for last in this tournament. The run that Miami went on in the women's tournament's really impressive. They were a 9 seed and just beat quality team after quality team. She had the game-winning shot against Indiana after getting blown out by Virginia Tech in the ACC quarterfinals. She and the Hurricanes just turned another gear after that Indiana win. Again, at Indiana, she goes to Villanova, has 15-9, upsets another all-time great player in Maddie Siegrist there. The run that Destiny Harden went on makes her the best breakout player.
You know, I'm going to keep it cordial to start out. You know, that is a great pick, John Dales. But somebody that impressed me a little bit more is coming out from Colorado. Quay Miller's run. The Bucks, I love storylines, Jacob. And I want to start with a really big storyline. She goes into this tournament 0 of 16 shooting from the field, just ice cold. And what does she do? Puts up one of the biggest upsets of the tournament over number 3, Duke. 17 points, 14 rebounds on 50% shooting in that OT win. Just a statement game. And I know you two talked about Ben Simmons' treatment towards centers, just leaving them at the arc. You can't do that against Quay Miller. She's hit threes in every single one of the games this tournament. So dynamic and really showed out in such a big spot against those Blue Devils.
Both great answers, John Dales. 3 points from your pick against LSU. That hurts you. But what Leo said, one of the biggest upsets of all time when you talk about an 8-loss team over a 6-loss team, I don't think so. We're going John Dales. John Dales was all over the place, kind of crossing people over. That's what we're going to do as well. Regardless, 1-0, a lead for Mr. Dales. We move on now to the best game from the tournament. What you got?
Third-seeded LSU against the number 2-seeded Utah Utes. This game was just phenomenal to watch, Jacob. I mean, you talk about the perfect balance. Basketball's a game of runs, right? You really saw it in this game. Both these squads go up 7 points at a certain time. They bring it back, but it's all about how you finish the game. And this game was just a beautiful finish. LSU goes up 8 with 3.5 left on the fourth. But what happens? Yana Neepkins answers 9-point run of her own, but it's not done just there because free throws matter. I'm going to get back to that point in just a second. 10 seconds on the clock. The Utes are down 1, and they take the ball, drive in. Angel Reese, the star of the Tigers, fouls with 1 second on the clock, fouls out of the game. And who's going to the line? Jenna Johnson, who shot 75% from free throw. And what did she do? Doesn't even tie it, misses both of them. What would the entire tournament look like if she hits one or even both of them?
It's a great what-if question.
It's almost like he's on the wrong juice here. Jenna, they're free throws. You don't pay for them. But look, good answer yourself. Look, we're being cordial here. I'll give you a Sweet 16 game. Let me set the stage. Miami, Villanova. Miami has just upset Indiana like I talked to you about. Villanova just stomped all over the best three-point shooting team in the nation in Florida Gulf Coast. So then these two teams meet, and it is just a clash of the Titans. Maddie Siegrist, who is setting scoring records left and right. She's her usual self, 31 and 13 in this game. But Miami, no pun intended, team of destiny at this point of the year. The fourth quarter begins, Miami's up by 8. 6 lead changes later, Villanova holds a lead with 49 seconds left. Miami calls one last timeout, and they go, we're getting the ball to Destiny Harden, take it to the hoop, and bring us to the Elite 8. She misses. Jasmine Robertson, 5'10", putback rebound, and 1. That's March Madness. That's the best game of the tournament.
That's a good argument. A couple really close finishes for Miami. That was one of them. However, the heavyweight battle gets the point for me. I'm going LSU and Utah. Leo ties it up 1 apiece. But John, that's how it works. You got another chance, right? We go now. What is the best upset so far, or not so far, in the entire tournament in its entirety?
I picked second on this, by the way. I want that on the record. Yeah. Leo did not take this choice. I'm about to give you Iowa upsetting 36-0, 42-0. South Carolina is the best upset in this tournament because of what we just talked about right before the break. This is an all-time great South Carolina team going up against maybe the best player in the country and the best player we've seen in a long time in Caitlin Clark. That's just an unstoppable force meeting up against an immovable object. Caitlin Clark shows everybody who she is, scores 41, primetime game, huge viewing audience. And again, there's just something special about this. You remember where you were for a game like this when a streak comes to an end. You remember when Wisconsin beat Kentucky, you know? You remember when games like this happen. That's why this is the best upset of the tournament.
It's a great pick, John, but I'm going to go back to your roots. We already showed it too. Beat the bookie with my pick here. Miami taking down number 1 Indiana. Let's play the spread lines because I know you both are very familiar. Yep. South Carolina was favored by 10.5 points in their game. What was Indiana favored by? 13.5. So if we're playing betting odds here, the Miami upset was bigger. And not to mention, this game wasn't even on a neutral site. This was in Indiana, and Miami was able to go on this incredible run in a building that Indiana has gone 17-1 in this season. And, you know, South Carolina, that's a huge, great storyline, that upset. But a lot of people really thought Caitlin Clark was the best player in that game. I think that's something we may be able to at least agree on. And that was just not a debate for this Miami-Indiana game. I'm confident that more people in the nation thought that Caitlin Clark and Iowa had a shot against South Carolina than Miami did in Indiana.
Both good answers. I actually think you guys missed it, and I'm being legitimately serious. I think Ole Miss over Stanford would have been my pick. But if we're looking at the two answers right here, I think you have to go with John Dales. I don't know what to tell you. When you talk about a team that had won 42 straight games, and you say, you know, somebody gave Iowa a chance, whatever it might be, not many people did, because quite frankly, South Carolina was a juggernaut. Iowa takes care of business. But now we move to our final question. This one's worth 2 points. Both players still in it here. Leo, your biggest takeaway from the tournament?
I mean, you guys covered it pretty well earlier. It's Caitlin Clark is otherworldly. This has to be the takeaway from this tournament. I mean, Twitter covered it completely. Everybody in the nation for the past couple days was talking about Caitlin Clark, and what more do I even have to say? But you look at the numbers, so you guys touched on some of them. The most points in an NCAA tournament history. That concludes men's or women's. 191 points. That's absolutely insane, Jacob. And then the first 40-point triple-double in both men's and women's history. Beat Louisville. The best part, though, was you guys talked about how she creates for her teammates. Also, even in her own offensive game, the big game she won, she was able to beat those teams in different ways. Against Louisville, knocked down 8 of those triples. You beat it from beyond the arc. But against South Carolina, she got a majority of her points driving, getting those layups, getting inside the paint and scoring. There's just nothing Caitlin Clark cannot do, and I think that's why she's got to be the biggest takeaway from this tournament.
Caitlin
Your
Clark,
response?
good at basketball. I'm not going to argue
Just
that.
good?
But we've done a good job transitioning into each other's points. I'm going to use what you said last round against you. Postseason games, first and second round NCAA tournament games at home sites need to go. Get out of here. I don't want to do it anymore. Look, this is supposed to be the postseason, not a continuation of the regular season. And when Power 6 teams go to neutral sites for their conference tournaments, and then suddenly they come back home for the first and second round games against mid-major teams, first of all, that's why you don't see as many upsets in the women's tournament than you do in the men's, because it's almost a true road game for a lot of these automatic qualifiers. And second of all, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right that Virginia Tech hosts a home game and can't play Enter Sandman because of NCAA postseason rules, but then the student body still sings it louder than if they would have played it. If the question is revenue, is selling tickets, I think this tournament showed you can sell tickets for a women's game at a neutral site, first round, second round. Get rid of the home games.
It's a great talking point from 2 weeks ago, Jacob, in my mind.
That's the whole tournament.
That's the tournament's biggest takeaway from the tournament, and I would say we knew Caitlin Clark was otherworldly coming into the tournament. So I'm giving it to John Dales. We said it, if you build it, they'll come. And hey, when you've got a sold-out Castle Coliseum, Virginia Tech's a great example. That's not a postseason game. John Dales takes it. Juicer winner.
Yes, sir.
Big time. Undefeated, by the way. Stayed all the way. That's good stuff. But it's time for another break here on No Pulp. When we come back, more national championship coverage. We delve deeper into the Huskies and Aztecs. Don't go anywhere. You're not going to want to miss it.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who wants to care.
Here we go. We're going to go out there in the rain. You're going to get wet. All right, here we go. Okay, quick. Oh, yeah. Yes. So much fun. Mwah. We're getting so wet.
Welcome back into No Pulp. Couple of battles in the juicer later. We're both still alive. Couple of winners as well. But we're going to talk about the game that's tipping off in just over 40 minutes. San Diego State, University of Connecticut. We'll start with San Diego State. We want to meet the impact players and the coaches on both sides. We start with the head man for the Aztecs, Brian Dutcher. He got his team here from, he brings them a couple of years ago in the pandemic season to a 30-2 record. The tournament gets canceled that season, and then out of the Mountain West Conference, suddenly he sustains success, gets a couple of transfers in this season, and he's continued to have success making it to the tournament, but hadn't won a tournament game until this year. He wins it, and it brings him all the way to the national championship game.
It's been a fantastic run. You mentioned that 2020 year. I think a lot of people in the San Diego area felt like, who knows how far that team could have gone, but it's a great story. 30 years after being on the sideline for the Fab Five Final Four run, he now returns as the head coach of San Diego State, as you see it on the screen right there. For the longest time, he spent by Steve Fisher's side as an assistant head coach. He could have gone anywhere. He could have gotten a head coaching job somewhere. He waited. He takes over at San Diego State. He said, I was pretty sure I had to have instant success after following Fisher. It's fair to say he has. Unbelievable run. They win the Mountain West, and here they are playing for a national title.
And in the biggest coaching moment of the year, we both liked it. No timeout with the clock running down. He said, players players decide games in March, not coaches, and they end up winning that game in the Final Four.
Big time. Now let's move to two players from San Diego State. First we go Matt Bradley, the California transfer for San Diego State. An unbelievable performance in the Final Four game against Florida Atlantic. After 3 of 17 shooting, John, in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8, comes out and lights it up for 21 points. He said he got a call from his old coach at Cal that said, hey, I'm not here to congratulate you. I don't like your body language. Said it completely switched his mindset. Unbelievable performance against the Owls.
Yeah, it's something to be said about a team that's in the tournament this long. You can have a slump in the Elite 8 and still come back and recover from it in the Final Four the way that he did. 21 points against FAU, but you mentioned him being a transfer as well. He transferred from Cal for this reason. At Cal, he was in the Pac-12, yes, but he had a terrible team around him. Couldn't even get on an all Pac-12 team when he was 5th in the conference in scoring. He comes over to the Mountain West. Not only is he playing for a national championship game, all Mountain West in his first year, newcomer of the year, Matt Bradley. Really good season for him. Another player on the team, though, that's had an impact, gotten San Diego State this far, Darian Trammell. Look, another transfer, first originally from community college in San Francisco, then goes up to Seattle University, comes to San Diego State after a couple of years there. And I think his journey is one of the most impressive of anybody that's left at this point. As a freshman in community college, again, in San Francisco, he was averaging 10 points a game. Now, in the biggest stage in college basketball, he's averaging 10 points a game. He had 21 in a win over a really good Alabama team. He had the game-winning free throw against Creighton. So Darian Trammell, he's a guy that you got to watch out for. Doesn't do anything really, really well, but does a lot of things pretty well.
And that's the type of performance that works on Dutcher's teams as well. Team-oriented defensive players, but what you pointed out is the key with Trammell, right? You talk about the new era of college basketball, not to step on my final word, but this is what makes the transfer portal so great. You've got a 5'10 guy, not a single D1 offer coming out of college, and all of a sudden he's playing on this stage. Unbelievable from Trammell, unbelievable overall from San Diego State. But hey, let's flip over to those Huskies. We talk coach now, you go Danny Hurley. Talk about one of the, we'll say, biggest characters in all of college basketball. Always quick, fiery on the court, always gives some wild answers in press conferences. Unbelievable job in stores to take the Huskies to where they are now.
Yeah, it's similar to Brian Dutcher, too. He had made the NCAA tournament in the previous 2 seasons, but you get into March this year and you're going up against Rick Pitino in the first round, and suddenly people are saying, look, Danny Hurley better start winning some tournament games. Otherwise, it might be time to find a new leader of the Huskies. But the way that he just has had supreme confidence in this team, I saw it earlier today. There's a clip that's been going around the internet that he said when they got beat up pretty bad a couple of years ago, he said, people better get their licks in now because we're going to be really good. Even earlier this season, he had 3 losses in a row in January. They had lost 5 of 6 in Big East play at one point. The way that they galvanized this team and got them ready to play for the tournament, again, nobody has played better basketball than Danny Hurley's team.
And he's a guy, when you look at his resume, that you just see from top to bottom, everywhere he's gone, he's won. Wagner, losing record to start, turns it around, wins 25 games, goes to Rhode Island, 2 straight losing seasons. Before he comes to UConn, 2017 and 18, 2 round of 32 appearances, losing season at UConn first season. Now he's in the national championship 5 years later.
And Hurley's best player, Adama Sanogo, averaging 21 points, 10 rebounds in tournament play. He had those 2 3-pointers at the start of the last game against Miami, too. He said, hey, they left me open, and I work on that shot every day in practice. Took a couple of spins of the ball and put them in. I find most interesting about him, we look at his recruiting rankings. He had initially, there was rumors about him decommitting down at the last couple of hours before going to Seton Hall. What I find really funny about Danny Hurley, he goes, I knew that he wasn't ruin his life and make the wrong decision. I knew he would end up coming back to us. He did, and now he's leading Hurley's team to a national title.
Big time, and we've sung his accolades several times now. You talk about a guy that's 20 and 10, hasn't played more than 27 minutes a game. And again, the 2 threes were so impressive because of how efficient he's been everywhere else. He's shooting 65% overall from the field. Really impressive stuff from him. First team All Big East, and somehow, some way, he's elevated his game in the NCAA tournament. It's been really impressive. But let's go to the backcourt, talk about Jordan Hawkins. He had a little bit of a, we won't go this far, MJ flu game, was feeling under the weather. John, what I loved about this was he just completely threw the restaurant under the, did you see that, under the bus?
I did.
He said it was the calamari from this steakhouse in Houston. It got me. I'm never eating calamari again. Rough look from the steakhouse, but not a rough look for Jordan Hawkins. Hawkins. He's been unbelievable all year long. We'll say the running mate to Sanogo does one thing, and he scores the ball at an unbelievable clip.
When you can go inside out with Sanogo and Hawkins, and both of them are on their game, there's not much that other teams can do. Hawkins, he just takes a lot of threes. He averages taking 9 threes per game once we've gotten into March, which is stepped up from his regular season average. He had 24 in a huge win that they had over Arkansas. If he's on, UConn is on pretty much every single time out.
It was unbelievable. Again, 13 points he still managed. He played 25 minutes a day after he said he slept the entire night on the bathroom floor. Impressive. Going to be tough for San Diego State tonight.
Didn't practice all week. We'll see what shape he's in tonight. Now we know the teams, though. When we get back, we'll take a look at their journeys and how they got here. No pull. Back right after this.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Meet Norm. He lives with anxiety, but with the help of this latest innovation from Be Normal, he can be normal, just like everyone else. With the swipe of a finger, you can project happiness, confidence, machismo. Why settle for being real when you can be normal? The Normal Maker, new from Be Normal. This item doesn't really work because there's no such thing as normal. We're all different. What we like, how our brains work. In fact, 1 in 5 of us live with mental illness. Don't filter who you are. Start by talking to someone you trust. And remember, there is no normal.
Welcome back into No Pulp. Jacob Morris and John Dale's getting you set for UConn and San Diego State in the national championship game, rounding out a really great March Madness. We're going to take a look now at how each of these teams got to this point, how they got to the national championship game. And we start with San Diego State out of the Mountain West Conference, 27-6 regular season, and then they get into the tournament. And right away, they go on a run that they play a team in Charleston in the first round, a darn good Charleston team too. You win that game close. And Jacob, I think that really got them ready for the rest of the tournament.
Big time, because I know I had College of Charleston in my bracket, and it was an incredibly popular upset pick, really, across the whole first round. They take care of College of Charleston and then just blitz. We'll say a mini Cinderella and Furman. They got cooking after that.
Yeah, they beat Furman. Then you get after Alabama. That's the game that not a lot of people gave them a chance to win it. And I told you, if you keep Alabama under 70 points, you got a good chance, and that's exactly what San Diego State did. They get past Alabama, and then they go up ahead, and obviously after that, you get into the Elite Eight. They play Creighton, get by Creighton, and they get into the Final Four.
It was an unbelievable run, and again, they proved me wrong from the standpoint of all the things that you said, right? You said this defense will travel for San Diego State, which is, by the way, everything that Hutcher says, Coach Hutcher says. So an unbelievable run. They relied on their strengths. And again, once they got past the College of Charleston game, I know obviously the last-second finish against Creighton, but comfortably took care of business against these teams.
And I think there's also something to be said at this point in the season. Yes, you'd probably rather be UConn and just blowing teams out, but something to be said about knowing how to win close. And that's exactly what San Diego State has done. 2 rounds in a row, 1-point game, and they win both of them.
Unbelievable from that standpoint. It's been all over the place for San Diego State, but again, that defense will be what? If they can pull the upset against the Huskies is the key.
Yeah, if the defense is able to be the one that sets the pace in this game, they've got a good chance. But obviously, as you're about to tell us, the Huskies have been pretty impressive in their own rights.
Yeah, the Huskies, when you talk about the run that UConn's been on, has been pretty much unstoppable, right? You go back and forth, and this is a team that in the tournament, right, has dominated almost every team it's went up against. It's been, blowout after blowout after blowout, and you open it here and you look at the bracket, and UConn matches up against Iona, and you say, oh man, right? That's Rick Pitino. Danger maybe.
Watch out
For Danny Hurley's squad that's lost in the first round the past couple times. not so much. UConn, sign and come, took care of business in the first round.
Yeah, that game, that was the first game that I saw Adama Sanogo hit a 3, by the way. It was at the end of the shot clock buzzer. I go, this guy's got something cooking right now. I don't want to be facing this guy. And then we go against your hated St. Mary's team. Worst 5 seed of all time, according to Jacob Morris. You blow them out of the water, too.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I'm not a St. Mary's hater. I just call what I see, and that was the worst 5 seed of all time. So I wasn't all that impressed with that win. However, I was very impressed with that win because I came on the show a couple weeks ago and said Arkansas is a really tough team. UConn gets through them and then just blows the doors off of Gonzaga to set themselves up against Miami. And once again, another comfortable win.
Yeah, that game was one of those where right off the opening tip-off, you knew this was UConn's game. They went up 9-0 right away. You had those 2 3-pointers by Adama Sanogo. And Miami tried, and we talked about it. It just couldn't manufacture offense. And again, that's not necessarily what UConn had done all tournament, but they shut down Isaiah Wong, they shut down the Hurricanes, and that's how they get here. Blowout win after blowout win.
It was unbelievable. Again, you're talking about an average margin of victory of over 20 points. UConn really hasn't been touched by anybody. Tall task ahead of San Diego State tonight.
And I think what's most impressive, too, is I mentioned it a little bit earlier, they struggled a little bit in the regular season, had lost those 5 of 6. You play in the Big East, too, which was kind of iffy in the regular year. 2 blowout wins over DePaul. I will give them that. But up in the air, UConn, once you get to the tournament, they'll really turn on the Jets.
Yeah, big time. And when you talk season recap from both of these teams, you know, you go back the San Diego State way. What do you see in terms of the Aztecs, what they put together, those games throughout the season that ultimately got them the Mountain West Championship and got them to be where they are now?
I think there's something to be said about a team that can win the regular season title, win the conference tournament, and then you go into the NCAA tournament and have success there as well. San Diego State, what they did too is Utah State, pretty good Utah State team, beat them 3 times. Beat them at home, beat them on the road, and then beat them in the conference tournament. That's a sign of dominance, again, from a mid-major conference, but when you can beat up on the best quality opponent you're getting.
Well, and those Utah State games are what I wanted to point out when you look at these key regular season matchups for San Diego State, because the Aztecs ultimately win the conference by 2 games. You can do some simple math, right? If one of those doesn't go the way of the Aztecs, you're talking about a tie at the top of the Mountain West. San Diego State got it done time and time again, something we're used to seeing from the Aztecs. Ran through, obviously, the regular season slate in the Mountain West. A strong Mountain West, by the way, that got 4 teams into the tournament, and in the tournament has done what they've done all season long.
Yeah, and we talked too, it was a talking point going into the tournament was the Mountain West hadn't won an NCAA tournament game in a long time, and San Diego State, they had gotten into, again, a tough draw with that good Charleston team. They end up getting the win and going from there. And again, when we're talking about UConn's schedule as well, we'll throw on the screen their impressive wins throughout the season, because again, there is plenty of them. Even way back as early as November, when they beat Alabama, you knew that they had the talent to make a run later in the year. You just didn't know if they were going to be consistent enough. And again, the later in the year is where we start seeing those other quality wins, January, February, and March, when they really started turning it on.
And a really fascinating kind of arc, right? Because you talk about the Alabama game, you talk about starting 14-0 for UConn, 13 double-digit wins, and all of a sudden everybody had the Huskies penciled in for the Final Four. But then you have those early, we'll say, growing pains, I guess, in conference play. You lose 6 of 8, and all of a sudden, do you remember I sent you a text and said, why is UConn still in the top 10 in the net? I didn't believe in the Huskies, but Coach Hurley and company figured it out, and I mean, we've said it enough, are rolling at the best possible time.
I think also that loss to Marquette in the Big East semifinals helped them, because it really, they turned on the Jets after that game. Marquette looked unbeatable after that. Marquette obviously struggles in the NCAA tournament. UConn's been just fine, though. Well, we're up against our final break, though. When we come back, he and I are going to tell you what we think's going to happen tonight, our predictions for the championship game, along with our final words. Stick with us. No Pulp will return real soon.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Hey, welcome back into the CitrusTV studios. John Dales and Jacob Morris still here with you. The national championship game tipping off in just under 30 minutes.
There.
We've talked a whole lot about it now, though. Let's get into the brass tacks, X's and O's. Jacob, you go first. Who wins and why?
All right, folks, again, we've talked about this time and time again, but I don't see any way that UConn doesn't come out on top. You see both teams being compared right there. Both incredible runs, but I've got the Huskies 73-60. I think they get another 13-plus point win. That'd be the first team ever in order to do that in the NCAA tournament, cementing the Huskies as one of the most dominant teams in all of March Madness history. I've got the Huskies.
I got the Huskies as well. I'm going 74-57. I think that point differential stretches even further after this one. We know who San Diego State is on defense. We just don't know. It's the last game of the year. It's April, and we don't know who they are on offense. They're going to go through dry spells, which has happened time and time again throughout in the tournament. They've found ways to get through it. Against UConn, though, I don't think you can hit those dry spells. I don't.
And the other thing for me when I look at both of these teams is you're talking about San Diego State has smothered teams on defense, right? But you know what UConn does really well? They play defense. You're talking about two teams that are top 15 in efficiency. So all of a sudden, you're now going back and forth with two teams playing defense. One team you just told me doesn't have an offensive identity. So I'm going to take the team that has been slaughtering teams with their offense, right? An attack that has all different types of assets. UConn's done that on offense. They've done it on defense. Give me the more versatile team every single time. I think UConn is that on defense and offense. Great run by the Aztecs. I'm just not sure if they hold it together.
We've also seen what happens when teams hit dry spells against UConn. The very start of the Miami game. Again, sorry, Zach Letson, but you're down 9-0 right off the rip, and then suddenly you're chasing points. You can't do that in the national title game. One wild card I will throw in there, though, is fouls. Look, this can turn into the ref show, as we saw in the women's tournament game. 37 fouls in the national title after 38 fouls in the Final Four game. If suddenly Adama Sanogo picks up two real quick ones, this game changes. If insert player here picks up a couple of quick ones, the game flips on its head.
Yeah, and I think that also goes the other way.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I know you're right. You're trying to sing the praises of, not sing the praises, but say here's San Diego State's path. But when you look at what Nathan Mensah has to do inside against Adama Sanogo, it's the same kind of idea, right? And he's been susceptible to foul trouble all season long, and all of a sudden he has to go up against a blowtorch of a player right now. You're right. If Sanogo goes out with foul trouble, you could see an entirely different game. Obviously, San Diego State, with their length, can make it difficult on the backcourt, on everybody on the UConn team. But again, if you see foul trouble causing issues for San Diego State, you're going to see a blowout, and maybe San Diego State has a shot if it goes the other way.
Yeah, you're right. The other thing, too, I think it comes down to this so many times is who's dictating the way this game is played. In that San Diego State FAU game, SDSU was able to win it despite the fact that FAU dictated the way it was played. San Diego State, if they have their way, this is going to be a slow, drag them out. Every single shot that goes up misses. Everybody's complaining about college basketball players not being good. That's what San Diego State wants. UConn wants a slugfest offensively.
And it's a great point. Remember what you said about South Carolina, right? If UConn gets in a game where all of a sudden it's close, obviously the Huskies have played a close game, but not in this tournament so far. On the biggest stage, you could see the Huskies freeze.
Those are the notes to look for as we go ahead. But right now, it's final word time. And for my final word, I have to say, it's time for head coaches to stop going into opposing locker rooms to congratulate the team they just played. I don't want to see it anymore. I don't want to see people applauding it on social media. It stinks. Jerome Tang, the head coach of Kansas State, he went into the FAU locker room to tell them how great they were after losing to them. Coach K, you're seeing it on your screen right now, he made it popular first against Mercer after losing to them. Dawn Staley, the head coach of the South Carolina women, did it to Norfolk State after after beating them in the first round. Look, it makes you try to seem better than. Like, hey, congrats. You should be proud of what you did. Yeah, I know we should be proud. We just beat you. We're equals. After a season-ending loss, the other way too, or a win to keep the season alive. Either way, no one who's ever played a sport says, you know what I want to hear from right now? The opposing coach. Coaches should be better than that. Don't make it about you. Stick to coaching your team.
John Dale's always stoking the competitive fire, as always. And I'll tell you something else that stokes the competitive fire. With one game left, as we try to digest this wild, wonky NCAA tournament, one thing is clear: the transfer portal has changed college basketball forever, and man, is it for the better. The evidence is widespread, but let's start with tonight's matchup. On the UConn side, Tristan Newton from East Carolina, Naheem Aline from Virginia Tech, and for the Aztecs, they're a national finalist that has completely embraced the new era. Matt Bradley, Cal, we talked about him. Darion Trammell, double transfer, community college in San Francisco, then Seattle. You've got Jaden Ledee, Ohio State, then TCU. Critics say the portal allows for guys to quit. To the contrary, it spreads the talent far and wide. Sean Moore and Dimitri Roberts, transfers who played an integral role in FDU taking down #1 seed Purdue, much to the sadness of me. Kansas State, 3 straight losing seasons coming into this year. The Wildcats add 9 transfers and make the Elite 8. The list goes on and on. The transfer portal has completely changed the sport and is directly responsible for the parity you see in front of you in the past couple weeks. You can complain about it being like NBA free agency, but John Dale's, it's for the best in college
You about to jump into the transfer portal? I just get worried. I get worried about that happening. Well, anyways, alongside Jacob Morris, I'm John Dales. Thank you so much for tuning in. UConn and San Diego State tipping off in just 20 minutes. Thanks for watching the show.